All right, welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways, or Sideways Coyote. Let's adjust my seating position here a little bit. Talk a little bit about restaurant work. So the hospitality industry is having a staff shortage, and it seems to be getting worse. And people are trying to justify and talk around the core issues. And the three main issues seem to be, when you talk to the people who are leaving the industry and who just don't want to come back, hectic working conditions, and this is not in order, hectic working conditions, bad customers, and low wages. And I'm going to go ahead and go through this just a little bit. Hectic working conditions, I think, might be generational. There are fewer and fewer healthy older people in the industry. When I do see older people in the industry, they tend to be somehow functionally disabled, unable to walk. And I'm not kidding. I have had servers who are unable to raise their shoulders, elevate their head, and take a full step. They kind of just shuffle. There's a lot of this going on. There's a lot of very broken bodies in the industry right now. For reference, I spent a couple of decades in the industry. I have been everything from a dishwasher to a restaurant owner, a deli owner, I guess, whatever. Depends on how you define it. It's a restaurant. Most of my time was spent as a server or a bartender, very customer-facing. I did enjoy it. I did notice, even as far back as the late 90s, that there were changes in the customers and changes in the business, and we'll get to that. So the hectic pace, I'm going to assign a little of that to an inability to handle, a lack of training in how to handle situations. So one of the things that younger generations have developed is a very extreme sensitivity. So if you just, if a cook just yells, "Hey, this is getting cold, get it out, get out of the weeds," it is a horrible, life-ending social justice issue. And I'm not really exaggerating. I have seen that happen. I've seen that happen as far back as 2002. And you're not built for the industry if you can't handle people getting a little strident when things are busy and things need to go out. Food quality matters. And when you've got a chef at a restaurant that's charging $50 a plate and the food's sitting there getting stale, they're going to yell. They actually take pride in their work. The kitchen staff does care about their job. They're not just light bulbs that you turn on and turn off. And this is going to get very much into the problem with the industry right now. Low wages is going to tie into the core element, which is what we're getting to, which is bad customers. The same problem that I've seen with many, not all, and some of this is cultural. I've seen a lot of Midwestern rural people do very well in the industry. I haven't seen a lot of urban people do very well in the industry. When you get to Millennials and Gen Z, there are a lot of people I notice in the industry who do okay, who do handle the stress, who are either veterans, have done some other work that involves actual stressful situations like EMT. A lot of people just go be EMTs for 2 years and then leave. I don't know why. Something about the job. Probably, actually, in fact, thinking about what I've heard from ex-EMTs, it's customer service. It's bad customers. The people you're trying to save are trying to kill you or threaten to sue you because you've saved their life or whatever. We have some social cohesion is the problem here. But I feel like you have to have you have to have had some smack in the face with reality to handle the industry. A lot of people don't have that. A lot of people are going to leave the industry or not be able to tolerate the industry just because of that. And there's no way to gentle them into that because of the customer base. And this is a thing where it's really hard to describe. It's really hard to make all of the little threads come together coherently. But you can start off as a very timid person and become a very good server. You have to have the right environment. You honestly have to start as a busser to do that, because bussers are somewhat invisible, but customers will used to anyway, use a busser as kind of an assist if they can't get the water from the waitress because the waitress is in the weeds or something, or the waiter just got slammed with a party of 20 and he's busy trying to fend off the mandatory guy conversation or whatever. These things happen in the industry. I don't know. The big one is customers, and I think that this is really the big one, because your customers actually drive your wages in the industry. As much as we've tried to get away, various places try to get away. They pull all the tips for all of the employees, but they don't actually pay the waitresses $15 an hour like they're paying the kitchen staff. Owners taking tips. Owners taking tips. Bosses taking tips. No. 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 And again, no. There's a professionalism. A server is going to tip out appropriately depending on what the situation is with the restaurant, the bar, and the bussers. The kitchen staff generally is going to be making a significantly higher base wage. Okay, a skilled short order cook for a real diner is pulling $20 an hour. Just you don't have to tip them out. They're not supposed to do anything special. They're just supposed to make each dish perfect. They're not doing anything special for you as a server. As a server, you tip out the bar, you tip out the bussers, and they do things for you. It's a symbiotic relationship. It's not the same with the kitchen. It shouldn't be the same with the kitchen. Your orders should not come up faster than other people's orders because you tip them out better. That's really not a good way to handle the cooking. And if you don't understand, you're just not going to understand. Customers suck. Customers suck worse and worse and worse each year, and there are actually studies, there's papers about social cohesion that indicate this. A lot of them, talk about social media or the internet or media in general, and how we're losing social cohesion, how we don't look at our fellow people in our society as human beings. And this is, to some extent, generational. To some extent, it's media-centric. There are a lot of older people who are just scared to death and bitter because everything is being taken away from them. Their social identity, their social cohesion, and they're not going to be nice to the server. They're scared, and they're being robbed of their social contract. It's not a happy place to be. Younger people, and I think that this really kicks in with what some people call late Gen X, but is absolutely, definitely into the Gen Y, the Millennials. I place the dividing line with growing up with some internet. Like, I was born in 1970. I did not grow up with internet. But someone who was born in 1978, well, they actually went to high school with internet. That's fundamental change there. So I generally look at 1976 as the real end of Gen X and where the Gen Y starts. So that's it. I think that Gen X is the last generation that really had that. When you start getting to the slackers, the post-75, the post-76, and Gen Y, I think that the selfishness really kicks in. I think some change happens, and I really think it has to do with media. and they don't look at their fellow man. They don't look them. I've noticed this so much. They won't look you in the eye and say good morning to you as a person. In fact, there are millions of posts on social media, all platforms, about how uncomfortable and awful it is, and they just wish people would leave them alone. You know, I was greeted by a gentleman last night. He's retired military. He's got it on his hat. You know, he's retired Army, and he's a Southern black gentleman, and absolutely what he is. And he, you know, we were just passing each other in the parking lot, and he just looked up, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "Good evening, sir." And I said, "Good evening, Sergeant." Insignia. And I said, "A little bit windy," because it was a little bit windy. And he's like, yes, it is breezy. "Have a good evening." And I said, "Have a good evening." Like, this basic, it's notable with black Southern gentlemen. Like, that, just the way they handle these situations is so extremely polite and present. They look at you and they speak to you. It's not just a formula, even if it sounds formulaic. But you'll notice this. It's not all rural people. In the West, in the rural West, there's a lot of people who are out here to get away from people, and they don't want to talk to you and shut the fuck up. But generally, rural populations are more present with other human beings than urban populations. Urban populations, you make eye contact, oh shit. Don't make eye contact, because they're gonna game you, they're gonna scam you, they're gonna try to sell you something, they're gonna poop in front of your table. There's just something wrong. Something bad is gonna happen. Urban populations really have humanity issues. And I think this really gets into why the industry is going to suffer, the hospitality industry is going to suffer. No one wants to acknowledge the humanity of the people who are doing things for them. And now, part of this, of course, is that we've got this social justice program, social meme going around where you're not allowed to have someone do stuff for you, no matter how much money or necessity is involved. And then on the other hand, we have the reaction to that, the reactionary, which is the standard example is the libertarian who believes that you are a subhuman servant who are being paid, and as long as the money shows up, shut the fuck up and do what I say. Which is not a way to handle your server. But it's very prevalent. It's hugely prevalent in males between the ages of 20 and 40 who are generally childless, often single, almost always technologically employed, somehow involved in technology. They are the rudest, most selfish and inhumane people who go to relatively better than Denny's kind of restaurants. Anyway, the whole industry is suffering, and I think the industry is suffering very much because our society is breaking down. I think that is where you're going to actually see that. Yes, we lack the training to be able to confidently and self-fulfillingly serve another human being for pay, like to serve a dinner and try to make the experience happy. We generally, in a social context, we lack the ability to do that. We're not trained to do that. We're not trained to think that that is even remotely okay. But more than that, I think that our society has been programmed to look at other people in the society, other humans, other people who are not very tightly tied to a special narrative tribal group, as unhuman, inhuman, subhuman, depends on where they're at. I've seen people go from wanting to leave a tip to stiffing a waitress because the waitress mentioned which way she voted when she was talking to a busser over at the wait station, and people overheard. That actually happens. That's where we're at. We're at this place where We dehumanize people to the point where we're willing to let them starve on their job. And that's really it. That's all I got. I do think the hospitality industry is suffering. I think that it basically boils down to, and we have studies on it, lack of social cohesion. Our society has fallen out of love with humanity. And it's not everywhere. There's hope, because there's a lot of us who are kind of trying to counter that. But the design of social media platforms, the design of the media, this is all the media does to try to keep their ratings, is divide, divide, divide. We have fallen out of love with humanity by design. What can you do about that? Stay sideways. That's about it.